So I would like to share a story that's a prelude to Joep's story. And that is a couple of years ago, we ran one of our many workshops, and Joep had sent somebody who works for him to our workshop in Lincoln. And I had a conversation with this young man and asked him, you know, how long had he been working with Joep and so forth. And he said, but you know, Joep is so different. I had been working for this company a long time, and then Joep came in, and we were all very suspicious. And then this guy comes on a motorcycle. Normally the boss comes in a big car, and here comes Joep in a motorcycle. He doesn't wear a suit, and we thought, he's not going to survive here. And that is the introduction.
Okay. Let me add one thing to, or let me build on that. Actually, the first management team meeting we had, I joined the company because I think I said so on the first day. They gave me an opportunity. I wanted a new opportunity to prove that appreciative leadership works. And so we have our first management meeting. And there's this big guy who's been there for, I think he was there for more than 13 years. And he says, I would like to let you know that we don't do AI here. They had learned. We do something else. We have, and I think he recalled, because I really looked into that. We work with Ruth Cohn theme generated interaction, I think, or something like that. It's an approach. So that was my welcome. And you should also know that the notion that he will not survive was based on reality. I was the 5th or the 6th CEO in 6 years. So my predecessors had really quite a record. Now that's a bit of the background, but I thought I never really know what I'm going to tell. So I about 2 hours before I have to speak, I get really nervous and I start to scribble. So I have a lot of notes here. I thought, I want to say that, I want to say that. And then I got to the back of this page, and you know, you have this saying where people say, well, when you don't know where you are and you don't know where you're going to, you're never lost. That's where I need to be. You know, I need to talk and think about what is really the core of where I am. I should not think in the models. I should not think in, but then I'm at ease. And I thought, where I'm at ease. And there is actually a circle that I want to make. And the circle starts with last night, because this is about leadership. And I thought, now what's the core of what's been happening for me here, and what's the lesson I learned, and what's one of the most powerful messages that I think I can share with you when it comes to leadership in an organization. Apart from doing things the AI way, I thought I can talk about why I'm successful. But that's relatively very simple, I would say. It's use AI all the time. Oh, do it. Nothing else. Use it all the time. But use it all the time. So when there is a celebration, use it. When there is a mourning, when somebody passes away, use it. When there is an event, use it. When there is a merger, use it. Use it with your appraisals. Use it when you fire people. Use the philosophy of appreciative inquiry. Now, what is the philosophy of appreciative inquiry? I'm still searching. I'm still searching. And that's why I want to start with last night. Gilles, to me, sort of revealed once more what is possibly something that goes to the core of appreciative inquiry, the core of who we are. And what I think then is building on what the little one-on-one that David and I played this morning, when he said, I was touched by the passion. And I said, yes. And I'd like to add that I think there is beside the passion also, or next to the passion, is the love and the respect. And that's what Gilles showed us last night. He showed us his passion, he showed us his love, his respect for the cathedral. And he saw things that we had never seen. In the pillars, he saw the strings of a harp. And what he actually could do, and what he made happen, was he made the cathedral sing. And we could all hear it. That's to me, that's extremely important. We could all hear it. What he did was that. So it's not, it's not something that we don't know, but we all heard what happened at the cathedral. Now, to me, that's the secret of what I call appreciative leadership. It is the possibility to see the opportunities that you didn't see before, and it's honoring the environment. It's honoring the stories that are around you, and sometimes unexpected. Now, the journey to get there is at times a very challenging one. I mean, when you enter a company, like I just said, and people say, well, he's not going to make it, and then the first management meeting you have, this group of well-respected people say, well, listen, it's okay, but we're not going to do AI. And then it's not going to work if you say, well, listen, I'm the boss. If you want to put me on a tie, I will do that, but you're going to... No, that's not the way it works. The way it works is say, well, okay, now what works for you? What works for you? And then it is trying to understand the complexity of leadership. And that's what I want to spend a few words and moments on. It's on that complexity, because things are not... I mean, it sounded simple, with the cathedral it sounded simple, but it's like Gilles told us, it takes the organ players 3 to 4 hours just to get in tune with the cathedral. And what he does changes, I think, every day, and in the day it changes as well, because probably when the temperature rises, the strings and the sounds is different. So we will have to see when he gets in tune with what's happening. And I'd like to take you back, or take myself back to a moment when I really started to understand what it takes to become an appreciative leader. It was when I was at a conference in New York, and I was asked to speak about appreciative leadership, which I did. And then at the end, we opened up for questions. And there was a lady who said, well, could you tell me the 2 things that I need to do to become an appreciative leader? And I never know why she asked for 2 things, but she did. And I was sort of caught off guard. What do you do to become an appreciative leader? Actually, how do you maybe to be an appreciative person, if you wish? And I actually don't know the first thing. I gave her an answer for the 2 things, but I remember the second one. I said it's to slow down. Slow down. Slow down. And that was based on something that I had been sharing in my presentation. I said, when you look at today's challenges, so the things we're confronted with in the stories that we heard, the one thing that we see, and which is probably one of our biggest challenges, is the acceleration that is currently going on in our society. Which is a very, very interesting phenomenon. I'll see if I can draw that, and I actually have a presentation which I'm more than happy to share with you later on, where I show part of that. If you look at time, and here is nothing, so this is eternity, and this is the future. There is a very interesting book by a Flemish professor, and he describes the 7 steps of awakening, which I thought is very nice, because in most religions we hear about the awakening and the creation, and it's the 7 steps. Now I got only 20 minutes with maybe a little extra, so I cannot do the creation of the world and stuff like that and describe it. But I'll step in. I'll leave this first part, which by the way is very interesting, because it's thinking about nothing, eternity. It's thinking about the coming into existence of space and the coming into existence of time. There were moments that we didn't have time and we didn't have space. It was very interesting, but let's just step in around, and if you were to look at the time scale, it would be just this little finger thing here, but just in order to make it clear, we'll step in somewhere here around the 1800s. And I'm talking here deliberately about our Western world. So we're not talking about the Chinese, the African, so Western society. Anyone, any idea what happened around the 1800s?
Industrial Revolution.
The Industrial Revolution. This is the Industrial Revolution.
La destruction of Europe by Napoleon. La destruction de l'Europe par Napoleon.
Oui. That's what happened as a result. So, if you look at what happened in our society, is that at this moment in time, we see something like this, which is the acceleration that is happening, is actually taking place in our society. And this is what you're dealing with when you're dealing and talking about leadership. This is actually, and there are two interesting other moments which are defining what's currently going on. And let's have the 1900s here and 2000 here, and it's just roughly, I mean, it's in a frame, it's not the exact dates. Now, what happened around the 1900s? Just with sort of what emerged closely shortly after 1900s. Anyone, any idea?
War?
Yeah, it's wars, but but in terms of, like, we had the Industrial Revolution here. What was the revolution here?
Communication.
The Great Depression.
I would say communication. Communication is here. It's the internet. So it's the communication.
Was the transport revolution, the
Transportation.
car,
Airplanes.
phone, or I don't know.
Cars,
Well,
railways.
it's a follow-up of the Industrial Revolution, whereby we had the tailoring stuff and
The
things like
Great
that.
Depression.
TV?
Could that be
No,
it?
the mobility.
I'm actually thinking of the coming of people like Freud. It was the psychoanalysis, it's becoming the interest for us as humans. And I'll tell you why I think that is. So it's the
Scientific.
yeah. And if you look at the Western world, what you also see happening, and here is again what is important, if you want to lead from a perspective, what is important is that I guess we understand the value systems that went with that. Because you see that each of these areas in Europe, in the Western world, went with certain value systems. And the one value system that, let's say, we started out with, because each area has its own set of value systems. And they fall. So there is a rise and a fall. And the word that often is used here, and what you said, Nadine, just was the coming into being of Europe. I mean, I have a map on my room, and it shows Europe in 1260, so when the cathedral was inaugurated. And it's a completely different map.
Yeah.
But in 1800, after Napoleon was defeated, we got all the borders and we got the systems into place. And justice, like this is my border, this is my country, these are my rules, was one of the key driving underlying values in our system. And then in the 1900s, when we started to look not as much at the systems, but more at the individual, who you are, what we saw happening was the rise and possibly a fall now of the self. And it's very interesting. This is the area whereby if you are not successful, if you do not have the right education, if you, like the story you told about Mark, if you have not fitted into this, you are not successful. So you're a failure. Right? You didn't finish school, you didn't make the numbers, you didn't produce the results. And this is something we're still very much confronted with. the interesting thing here, and that's where AI, as you will see later, will come into place, is that we are again moving into a new area of values, which are important, I would say, for the leaders of tomorrow. And I would describe these as the feminine values. We see that there is much more attention now for what are, if you wish, the soft side, but it's certainly not the soft side, the values that honor more than the brains, more than the facts. So this is actually something that builds on top of. It's not an either or, it's a both end. It's understanding where we come from and where we may be going to. Now, this is happening in our world, and I always get confused with this presentation or nervous because I hear things like I heard over lunch when we were talking about ADHD and we were talking about the reptile brain and the limbic brain and the neocortex, and I thought, well, I need to use that as well, and how is that fitting in there? And then it becomes messy probably, and I shouldn't do that, but it is very interesting because you could probably lay that on this as well. But one of the challenges that we face in our organizations and our need for interventions like AI and other strengths-based approaches is actually found, I think, in what is happening here. Because what our world is crying out for, and this is why I answered the lady what I answered her, I said we need to slow down in order to provide good leadership, is that in order to stay in balance, and Gilles was in balance, in my view, with what was happening with his environment, with the cathedral, only because he was in balance with that. He could demonstrate us, show us what happened, is that what is required, and I dare say to use the word required, is that this happens on the other side. So this is, I call this often this is our outside clock. Oops. Or the external clock, if you wish. Now, that's the world around us. It's ticking faster and faster. And we haven't seen anything yet. I mean, David, coming from a business environment, I worked at BT where we had people at Industrial Park, which is a group of 2,500 scientists that try to predict the future 50 years ahead. They have a track record of being accurate, I think, of more than 80% over the past years. If you see what they predict for the next 50 years, I mean, it's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. The world won't be what it is right now in terms of artificial intelligence, health, education, incredible. And this is what I describe as our internal clock. And to build on what happened during lunch, I think that we call things diseases now, like ADHD, which maybe are not diseases. They're not illnesses. They come about because things are happening on the outside and people start to show certain behavior in response to what's happening. Or maybe as a lack of a response of knowing how to respond to what's going on. And this is the line on which you see AI having a place. And I'll get into that in a second. And you see all sorts of external reactions to trying to slow down. I mean, very few companies in the 1900s really worried about their vision and their mission. Maybe apart from the church, but probably not even the church. Few companies worried about that. And but in around the middle of the last century, we started to be concerned about our vision and mission. So we started to draft these vision and mission statements. And what we have found is by now that vision and mission statements do not really work. Well, I've been doing work with larger corporations, and I've taken, which I seriously did with one corporation, and I took 25 vision and mission statements from stock listed companies, and I took away where they came from. I said, now you tell me where they come from. And nobody can. Probably we can't either. They all pretty much look the same. So what is the next move? So we have our vision and mission statements, and then we thought, well, okay, if it's not the vision and mission statements, let's look at the values, which is an interesting one because that's starting to fit already in more into who you are and what you come. So we're looking into the values, which I think today is still something that's fairly actual. I mean, we're looking into that. We're working with that. But we also see that there are becoming cracks. We're getting cracks into that. And here is where I start to do and be maybe sometimes different and sometimes a little bit too different. So at my company, I saw, well, this is not really working anymore. This is not how we can tell to make the difference, because clients won't see it and I don't see it internally either. So 2 years ago, no, a year and a half ago, I asked a group of students, and I said, well, would you please come and do something for me? And this is where I don't know whether the next step is the right one, but it's like in AI, you do what you think is right. If it's not, do something different and say, well, okay, we'll try it later. So what I did is what I thought, and what I still think, by the way, so I'm not convinced that it's not right, but I thought that the next step is, in order to slow down, in order to actually find the balance, because that is what it's all about. It's not about slowing down, but it's finding the balance. I said, well, now tell me, and that's why I love you with your stories about the movie, because I think what movies do is they sell collective dreams. So now what are the collective dreams that we have as a company? So as a leader, I mean, some of the projects that you have, and I know it may be just a step too far to ask, but what would happen if you were to ask the company that you do the intervention with, so now what is the collective dream that the people that work here have? Why do 100,000 people come to work every day here? What is the dream? What makes them proud? What makes them tell what is going on? Actually, do they tell at a birthday party or a gathering that they are proud to work at a company? So what is it? What is it that's there? And that leads to the steps that even for me are that I'm trying to discover as a leader. But at least it's where I keep my eye focused on, is that you start to wonder, what is the purpose? What is the purpose of what I'm doing? What is the purpose of why I'm here? I mean, do I know that? And do I know that as a company? Well, from a leadership perspective, I think that's a very powerful question. Why are we doing, this is often the why question, why are we doing what we are doing? And tell me the best story you have on when you encountered that feeling, that notion. And that's the moment when you get to the happenings like last night, to what happened with Gilles. When he made the cathedral thing. And possibly beyond this is, and this is something that I've been really wondering about and working with ever since a meeting, and I think it was a meeting of the 22, and I think it has, in my mind, it has become the meeting that we had in Denver. Were you in Denver? I think and maybe I have constructed it that way, but to me that works, and sometimes constructions are okay to create. That's a meeting that I recall, and we were still thinking about what is appreciative inquiry. What does it work? What does it mean? And I recall that David Cooperider was late for that meeting, and when he came in, he shared a story that he thought that he had a new discovery in AI. So we had the D's and we had the principles, and he said AI is about the positive core. It's about discovering the positive core. And to me, in my work, I'm asking people. I'm saying this. I say, what are we doing to discover that? What are we doing to discovering that? And are we also just trying to discover that for our clients? The positive core of what our clients are doing, and are we helping them to find that? And some people will talk about what is the soul of what you're doing. What's the soul of what you're doing? And there a total different way of leading a company comes into play. Because here, what we do here is we use our head, we use our brains, particularly. That's what was really working well here. This is where we're great at the problem solving and decision making stuff. We think about this, and as said, it's on top of what I'm describing here. So I think it was Mette who talked about the car. I sometimes give lectures, and I tell students that if my watch doesn't work, it stops working, I don't want to go to the jeweler, just like Mette didn't want to go to the car person and say, well, now tell me the time that your watch really worked very well. No, I want somebody who's very analytical. It says, okay, it doesn't work. Well, did you drop it? Let me check the battery. Let me see if the glass is broken, if there's any water. I want somebody to be very analytical and use his head and use his brain and do the analysis. What we have moved into this space here is this space of what is using not only our head but also our heart. And in business, I say this is closely to the single bottom line. And the single bottom line meaning it's about money, nothing else. We think about how we do the money thing. Here, we're moving into the space, which we did at the end, let's say we started in the 80s. This is where we moved to the triple bottom line. So it's people, planet, and profit. And profit is there. There's nothing wrong with profit. But it includes, the right balance is people, planet, and profit. It's looking at the system as a whole. And the space we're moving into, which is a challenge for leaders. When I hear your story about the lady, I guess that's one of the challenges, like Bernard shared his story about what he is trying to do with EDF. It is about this movement that we're all in, whereby in the time to come, and we're actually on the threshold, is my belief, so we're stepping already into it, is that it's not only the heart, but it's the whole, it's the whole system. And sometimes I use, for this phase, I use the word wholeness. And wholeness goes also for the results. So it's even beyond the triple bottom line. What that exactly means, I don't know. I don't know what it exactly means to go beyond the triple bottom line. I do have an idea which I'll share with you at the end. But this is the process we're in. Now, if you want to lead an organization successfully, you have to understand that we see all of this, and you will have to find the appropriate approach. So it's the question. So the question might be, where are you? If you explain this, where are you? Where do you feel that you are? Because there is no right and no right or wrong. is where are you? And are you prepared to travel? Travel where you're going. And let me add one thing here before I come to a conclusion, right? Because I need to watch the time. There is one other thing that I sort of builds on to this. And let me introduce you with a little story. In 2003, so I was an independent consultant until 1998, and then I joined Syntegra, a branch of BT. And I became the director for that group. And I started, as I said before, I started to apply AI. I would say fairly rudimentary, like most of us. I've been introduced, I've known it for a couple of years, but never really, well, I applied it as a consultant, but never as a manager. And I got a phone call, from a lady who was well known in the network, is Marge Schiller, and she said, Joep, I'm doing a presentation on leadership, and I want you to come and co-present with me because you have this wonderful practical experience, which at some of the meetings I shared. And I said, as sometimes when I get invited, people know that when I get invited, I do show up and do come. So I said, Marge, it's okay, I'll be there, I'll come. So, but I'm also a pretty busy guy and I have lots of things to do. I think I have lots of things to do. So I didn't prepare anything. So I was on the plane and I thought I better bring some magazines along and some books on leadership because I have to present something there. What am I going to do? So on the plane from Amsterdam to, I think it was in Washington, that's not really important, in the States, I read something and I read a few interesting things and I had this eureka. I thought, well, you know what leadership is about? There is a value chain in leadership. And that's what I presented. And there was this, and I recall there was this person from McKinsey who said, well, this is really wonderful. It's well thought through. And that's realized that may happen as well. So what did I invent as a value chain? I said, well, when you look at this, and it goes for this picture as well, but everything starts with data. And data is very raw. I mean, I've never done this before, so I hope I spell it right, but I thought I'd honor the French here. I thought, well, data is just like this. Yeah, so it's an A, it's an R, M, U. No, this is data, right? Which is basically nothing. It's just data. Now, but if you put data together in the right way, I'll try, what you get is information. Now, what I had in mind was, now you'll have to tell me whether my French is too rusty or is okay, is amour. That's right. So, and this is how you build from data, from just raw data, you build information. But now, the interesting thing is that you went already one step too far. Right? Because you say, well, I mean, how can you say, aha? Like, to a child, this would be just a word, like so many other words. Somebody who doesn't know how to read could say, well, this is just a word. But listen, when we grow older, so in the value chain, when you go in the value chain, what happens, it becomes knowledge. It becomes knowledge. So leaders already have a sense of how this works. So they get the data from the organization. You gather the data. You gather the stories. You can see it as information, and you can also understand that it's knowledge. And we know amour, c'est l'amour. So that's where it becomes knowledge. And knowledge in the sense that I would say to make this knowledge. What it will look like is this. It's like a heart, sort of the arrow. That's the knowledge that we have. Now, if you even further go in the value chain of leadership, and again, leadership is about understanding these things, nothing more, nothing less. So we're all leaders, I always say, is that it becomes wisdom. You know, and you know what wisdom is? If we take the example of amour, at least for me, and this didn't exist 2 hours ago. To me, wisdom in amour means that you know what it is when your heart has been broken. That you know what it means, how much love can hurt. Because that's where it becomes wisdom. So you become mild to others. So you have understanding. You have empathy. That's what's happening when you create the wisdom. And I think there is even there are things beyond this. There are things beyond this. This is where I think the word, again, wholeness comes in, or maybe spirituality. It's some wholeness or spirituality. And this is where I think that's what's happened last night, is when we have this sense, and even though nobody really can describe it, but we heard the cathedral sing. That's not wisdom, that is a sense of spirituality. Now, I'd like to end my presentation with telling you that this does not come for free. Well, in a way it does. In a way it does. We all have it. But in today's world, in this environment, it requires to slow down. It's like Naida, she walks every morning, she told me.
Right.
Is it? And that's okay to share this, right?
Yeah.
You see, she runs every morning. And we had a beautiful conversation about it, and it is to empty us. I do it not every morning. I do a few different things, and I run twice a week. But it's to empty. It's to make sure that in this day, this bombardment. I think you used the bombardment earlier this week, Mette, when you said there's a TV and things. And some of us, I don't know who it was, but I heard somebody say this week, I don't have a TV in my room, and it's a blessing. And it's the same for me. I don't have a TV in my room, and it's a blessing. Yeah, it's wonderful. So it helps. It requires what I call practices. I used to call them disciplines, but by now I have defined for myself. I have defined not every time, but over the past 10 years, I've found for myself 9 practices. And the 9 practices is what I want to end with, in the final remark. And these practices, to me, are very much related to the appreciative inquiry process. And I have a sheet with this, so, I mean, of course, feel free to write down, but if you want them, I'd be more than happy to mail them to this community, or to any community, you can share them. And these practices, for me, are the following. First of all, there is the practice of presence. And by that, I mean the practice of presence to be open for what is. Just embrace, accept what is happening. And it goes for all your cases and all your situations. I mean, you can fight and resist what's going on there, but try to accept what's there. That's the practice of presence. I believe in the practice of interconnectedness. And I sometimes find that very hard to describe, but it's, in my view, everything is connected to everything. But in essence, it comes down to a word that's used in South Africa, it's Ubuntu. Mm-hmm. And my description of Ubuntu is that I am because you are. Mm-hmm. I can only exist because you exist. That's, to me, the essence of being interconnected with people. Mm-hmm. Well, when you honor that, I mean, just think about what happens if you honor that in meetings. If you can look at the other and say, well, I could not even be if they were there. There is the practice of humility. Mm-hmm. I don't know. As a business leader, I mean, with this rapid development in our society, I mean, in the past hour, probably 10 books have appeared in the world. Thousands of pages on the internet appeared. I don't know how many dialogues on Facebook, LinkedIn, and so on. I can't know everything. I simply can't. So humility is really a very important practice. It's the practice of discipline. I mean, that's why I love people that have the discipline of starting to run every morning. I get up during my work days and I do my exercises, physical, yoga, and my meditation. And I need that in order for myself to be empty, and other people do other things. But there is something very much in the rituals that come with discipline. Something that you're really, quite a few of you are up to, is the practice of courage. You're going to work with AI, you're going to experiment with AI, and whatever we say about it's okay what you do, it's going to be scary, and it's going to require some courage, because you're going to talk to people who may be very much in the bottom line mode and say, well, listen, how is this going to generate extra money for me? And you may think, well, this is also about people and their stories. And so there may be a conflict there. And it will require courage to do that. I believe in the practice of integrity. And that is, an integrity to me means that you search continuously for who you are, and that you are also interested and curious in who the other people are. To me, that means integrity, to who they really are. I mean, we often talk about Kierkegaard as the philosopher from the 19th century, but there was also one around World War II. There were a lot of people in Denmark, I think, that go by the name Kierkegaard. And I saw once a definition of leadership from him, and he said leadership is about people giving a second chance, very interesting, to become who they truly are. A chance that we give them to change the imprint society has put up on them. And that's what he called with a second chance. I mean, we all have the imprint of our society. I need to behave so and so. I come from that background. That's why. So that's the imprint we got, and so we have a right or wrong from that. Integrity means that you try to search for the wisdom in each person, even though truth may be a liar, but that's a different story. There is the practice of appreciation. To appreciate that what is happening, and appreciate in this respect does not mean to approve, to agree, to think that it's right or wrong, but is to appreciate what's happening. I mean, if you were to be very uncomfortable with what I've spoken, to disagree with it, for me, the practice of appreciation would be to honor that and to appreciate that. I do not necessarily have to be happy with it, but to appreciate it. We're getting close to the end. The practice of reflection. To reflect, which I guess we have done wonderfully so far, is having the closing of the day and the opening of the day and to reflect on what's been happening. It has everything to do with the slowing down. Slow down, reflect on what's been happening. And finally, which I think is a challenging one, is the practice of transparency. We talk a lot about transparency, but how often do, at least I find, I have great difficulties with the agendas that are going in the back of my head and the back of at the offices. Trying to be transparent. Again, that brings it together and requires a great deal of courage and things like that. Now, if my conviction is that if you could do that, and you talk about leaderships, and if leaders could do that, what will happen is that, and this is what I meant when I said I would make the circle round and start where I started with the story of Gilles in the cathedral, listening to what is to the building, to the pillars that are the chords, and he could make and hear them sing. It's just like is that if you just could imagine that if we were to do the things that I've talked about, would it then be possible not only to make the cathedral thing, but hear the cathedral that you are yourself. You can hear yourself, the deepest voice that's within you. You could hear your soul sing. And if you have discovered that, you have discovered the leader that you truly are.